Welcome to Season 2, Episode 4 of our Miss Scarlet Summer on Postscript. I'm Christina Zeiters.
And I'm Tom Downing. You can watch along with us on the PBS video app or by visiting witf.org/passport.
And then you can join us on your favorite podcast platform, or you can watch our podcast on YouTube at youtube.com/@WITFmosaic.
And
Yes.
and we also are still doing our Postscript bingo this season. So if you haven't gone and downloaded your own bingo card, you can do that now. You go to witf.org/PSBingo for that. Yep.
So you can print your own card, and then you'll want to spot the clues. You'll want to watch and listen. Use both of those sentences through all 6 episodes.
Mm-hmm. And every week you can send us our clues or your clues at ps@wtf.org. And we were just talking before we started here, and there's things that I've missed. Christina's missed.
I've missed so
So
much.
you can let us know what you found, and just email us at ps@witf.org.
Yes, and then at the end of the season, if you've emailed us about your clues, you'll get a YouTube link to a special bonus episode where we'll reveal all of the clues with on-screen cueing and everything.
Yeah, so play on your own with friends or with family. And so
Yeah.
let's get into the
Are
episode.
you ready?
Yep.
Okay.
Season 2, Episode 4.
So this, I love this opening. It's so playful. Eliza is dissing Mr. Potts to Ivy.
Yeah, they're like right outside of their
they're like leaving for the day.
Yep.
Ivy's off to do some errands, and Miss Scarlet's, out for her shenanigans. So Eliza's just complaining about Mr. Potts. Ivy's trying to defend him.
Yeah, she says that maybe you've misjudged him.
Yeah, I mean, Ivy obviously likes Barnabas. She
Yeah.
calls him by his first name, which is a
Eliza's like
Barnabas.
Barnabas.
Oh. But Eliza says, if you insist on this dalliance, you can at least convince him to grant me access to the morgue. So she's like, I can use
self-motivated.
this.
She's like, yeah, how can I turn this to my advantage? She also gives Ivy a hard time for the new hat that she has for Barnabas.
She's going to buy a new hat.
Oh,
That's where
new
she's
hat.
going.
Getting a
She
new
has
hat.
to go out to a particular store, and she's like, are you buying a new hat?
But this is interrupted because they notice this weird, creepy guy across the street.
Eliza notices that there's a man in like a trench coat with a scar on his eye. He's watching her, like holding a newspaper to look nonchalant, but she notices him and goes on about her day, though. Like, I guess she gives him the benefit of the doubt there.
Yeah, but noted.
Yeah, noted. And then we see the man walk away, and he walks into Nash & Sons.
Yeah, it does a cut to a different location. They're outside of Nash & Sons, which is a detective agency.
And he knocks on the proprietor's door and says, I have the information on a lady detective, sir.
Mm-hmm.
So somebody's tailing her involved with Nash & Sons. We don't know why.
Yeah, and the guy, the scar-faced man, has a folder with all the info. So, yeah.
Yeah, marked.
Yeah.
Eliza Scarlet.
Eliza Scarlet. And then that's a cue title sequence. And so
Yes.
we do title sequence. After the title sequence is over, we're outside, and we see Eliza is walking by a carriage of Dr. Flint's, which is like
Dr. Flint's universal elixir.
Yeah. Big or small, it cures it all.
I love that you got that.
Yeah. But as she's walking past, she's stopped by a Mr. Doyle, who is the assistant to Dr. Flint.
Yes. And he's hoping for he just shows up expecting or hoping for a meeting, I should say, with her. And Eliza looks over at Dr. Flint, who is in the carriage, and he just looks like a miserable old man.
Crotchety old man in a carriage.
We find out he is.
He is. So they cut to the office. So they're inside Eliza's office. Dr. Flint wants to hire Eliza on a quote sensitive issue.
Yes.
And there was an anonymous letter saying that one bottle of his elixir is poisoned, and the toxin is from the Angel of Inferno plant.
Yes.
And
if they don't pay the ransom,
which is £1,000,
right? The ransom will increase, and a second poisoning will occur.
Yeah.
So, but they hand the letter to Eliza, and she kind of like chides them for waiting 7. They waited 7 days.
Yeah, the deadline's already
bring
passed.
her in, and Mr. Flint implies that she's desperate for cases. That like, you
he's
need
super
to
insulting.
take this case. He's just so misogynistic and gross.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
It's a good thing Mr. Doyle is there because he has a softer touch.
Yes. And so Eliza's not really inclined to take the case at this point. At all.
Because she wants to read the confidentiality agreement that they want her to sign.
She even has to sign it. That's kind of insulting in and of itself. Like at this point, like he's being a jerk to her and she has to sign this confidentiality agreement. And she's
he's
like,
acting like, why are you even bothering reading it?
Yeah.
And you must be desperate for money.
So she says, no, she's really busy with other cases. And she's like very dismissive until Doyle drops this fat roll of money.
Wad.
Yeah, right in front of her. And she's like, where do I sign?
Of course. I will make time for it. Yeah. Where do I sign? Oh, yeah.
So then we leave that. We cut to Scotland Yard. So in Scotland Yard, Fitzroy is singing in the records department. And he's singing the Modern Major General.
I didn't know what song it was, but I know those are some of the words of
it. Which I don't know if that's the title of it. I should know this. But anyway, it's in a musical.
Yeah. I mean, he sounds so happy. Yes. He's so happy. And then his dad arrives.
Yeah.
And his dad says how disappointed he is and that I'm only glad your mother isn't alive to see it.
I took a note of that
You're supposed to be a police detective, not a filing clerk. I'm like, robbing this kid of his joy. Come on.
He is not a supportive parent.
No, he is a terrible man.
So we cut to outside of that office. We see William. He overhears Fitzroy and his father, Fitzroy's father basically
reaming Fitzroy out for filing. Yeah.
And so William comes in and Fitzroy's father calls him like a junior clerk, and William's like, yes, your son is a very proficient police officer, but he has been in the force for barely half a year. So William's trying to diffuse the situation and give Fitzroy some credit.
He just needs some experience and to learn the ropes, essentially. And his dad's implies that Fitzroy asked for administrative duty, and he did.
He did, but William kind of covers for him.
Yeah, William does not out him, which I thought William is doing him so many solids, and this is the season I start to like William because I can see he has a good heart at least.
Well, and this, there's I have more on that later that we'll talk about, but like the police commissioner has other ideas still. Even though William has kind of like diffused it a little bit, the police commissioner is still like, no, he needs to be out there, doing man's work. So we cut to Monroe's office. William is telling Monroe that Fitzroy will be reinstated as a police detective and make the inspector by the end of the year. So that's what the commissioner really wants. Monroe is like
the police commissioner gets what the police commissioner wants.
Yeah.
So Monroe's just doing what he thinks he needs to do to keep his job.
William's like, you can't be serious, sir. And Monroe wants his budget, and so Fitzroy's gonna be what the police commissioner wants. And so, like, this is where I kind of Monroe's character is fascinating in the show.
Yeah.
In my just because he is the foil for he is what William wanted to be.
Right.
That's
the spot he essentially wants.
Well, and they have the same background. This is what I like. They really position it so they could have been the same person.
Right.
But the difference is William stands up for what's right.
Integrity. There's the integrity that he has.
And Monroe is like, we need to do what we need to do for the budget or to get this or do that. So we make compromises.
Which is also a valid approach to much of life.
It is. Except it's more realistic in certain respects.
Yeah. But in this case, like Fitzroy could put other police in danger, which he already has on a raid.
Yeah.
Or himself. And it's not real nice to just put somebody in harm's way because that's what their daddy wants.
But the contrast, and that's the thing that William also brings up. You're right that Fitzroy could put other people. And Monroe agrees with all of William's arguments.
He doesn't have anything to like shut it down. So Monroe basically tells William that Fitzroy's just going to be transferred to Detective Phelps' team.
Yeah, which Phelps hates him.
Right.
Loathes him.
And, like, William's just going to be taken out of the equation. And Monroe kind of frames it in a way that, like, Fitzroy would just I think he says blacken your reputation to William. So he's acting like he's doing William a favor.
But no.
But, yeah. I mean, William does say Phelps hates Fitzroy.
Yeah.
And Monroe says he'll either give up or die trying.
And he seems to be okay with that. Yeah. So Monroe says that's that, and William's like, yes, sir. So it is what it is. So then from that scene, we cut to Mr. Potts whistling. He's happy.
He's happy and in love.
Yeah, he's walking on his way, and he's greeted by Eliza outside of the city morgue.
Which, dampens his mood just a little bit.
Immediately. Again, by that sign where it says, like, no admittance or whatever it is. Right. Eliza wants to know about the poisonous plant that she heard about with
she wants to know all about the poisonous properties and he's a coroner, so he'd probably know how to detect this and what it does. And but he suggests that she visit the British Library, which is only a 10-minute walk from there, and shout out to library, she would get the information.
Libraries are amazing. Yeah. They should be supported. Eliza, all sources are valid sources, but she wants to go in and talk to him specifically. And then, he's very dismissive until Eliza mentions Ivy.
Yeah, she says, Ivy was asking after you this morning.
And then,
I, of course, gave her a very agreeable account of you.
Which is a straight-up lie. Straight-up lie.
And will happily continue to do so. Yeah. She goes on to say, you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours.
Yeah. And Mr. Potts calls us out. He says, that is blackmail. And then Eliza says, that is business.
Yes,
so
which does come back to haunt her later.
That's the writing in this episode is really, really on point. So is there a deal? Mr. Potts notices, but they're about ready to kind of resolve that, but then Mr. Potts notices that same scarred man off to the side.
Yeah, his demeanor completely changes too. He kind of takes on a protective role.
Yeah.
So I was like, is he actually softening to Eliza at this point? Because he spots this man and he's like, there's a man watching you.
Yeah.
And warns her about it. And it's the same man from the
Scarface man watching
scar,
Eliza.
And Eliza locks eyes with him again.
Yeah, definitely seen both times. He's not very good at
No, he's not.
I have a newspaper. You can't see me behind this newspaper.
No. Pull it up. Now I'm invisible.
Yeah. So the Scarface man leaves after being seen by both, and Eliza leaves. I'll be back, Mr. Potts. And so,
he's like, God save us, or something like that.
Yes,
he's not looking forward to it.
So after that, we cut to William's office. Fitzroy enters. He's all beaten up.
He's got a black eye. His dad is super gross, and I hate him.
Fitzroy is confused that he's supposed to report to Phelps now, and William is dismissive. He's not supportive in this. He's very he's towing the line. William is. He's like he doesn't want to show any of his feelings, or his compassion. He's compassion
not outwardly,
is
because he's trying to stay in line and follow orders, direct orders that he was given. And Fitzroy basically lists all of the reasons that he shouldn't be under Phelps, and the ones that William listed himself.
Yep. And William just says, "Get back to work," and Fitzroy's like, "Yes, sir." And Fitzroy leaves. And so then we cut to outside of Nash and Sons, which is the place where the Scarface man
guy
went to. So Eliza has followed the Scarface man, and she walks past the door, and then
she peeks in.
Yep.
Sees him.
And then goes in and asks the Scarface man, "Why have you been following me?" And then that's when
we meet Patrick Nash.
Yeah.
So Patrick Nash is the proprietor of this joint, and when he first heard of her, the lady detective, he thought that her detective work was just a hobby, like everybody else seems to dismiss it as. And all of his men were amused, and they took bets on how long she'd last. But then she kept going, and months later, she's still doing it. And so now he's not amused, because now she's competition. Yeah. And he said he wants to hire her.
Yeah.
He says she's determined, ambitious, and hungry, the Holy Trinity. And I'm like, basically, Eliza is House Slytherin here. Ambitious, determined, and hungry.
Yes.
So he wants to hire her. He's very confident that she's going to take this. I want you to work for me. Too.
And just step into my office, and we can talk the terms. And he's very presumptuous about this.
Oh, yeah. He's confident. She's just going to be like, yeah, I would love to.
She knows about Nash and Sons, which at this point, I thought that he was the son in Nash and Sons, like it was a family business. And we find out later that
he has no sons.
It's Nash and Sons. It's all marketing. It's just a show. And so, Eliza knows about him, knows his history, says blackmail is your favorite tool. She says, "Thank you for your offer, but no thank you."
Yes.
And call off your dogs.
Points to
the Scarface man. Eliza leaves, but Nash follows. Yeah. And he says, as an Irishman, this is outside, I know what it's like to face prejudice. And Eliza says, "We are not the same." And Nash says, we have Dr. Flint's case
in common.
Yeah. And Dr. Flint came to Nash first, but Nash was too expensive. And so
Then he went to Gill and Sons.
Again,
and they were
costly.
Too expensive.
So we find out that Eliza's
the lowest
fees
rates in London. And he basically says, you're selling yourself short.
Yeah, which is true.
She says basically, that's not my problem. And he said, it is when I have to undercut you, which is what I'm going to do with Dr. Flynn. I'm going to offer my services for free.
Free to just basically...
Unless you reconsider my offer.
Which is blackmail. Again,
Yes.
like that is his...
I mean, to be fair,
Yeah.
Eliza uses the blackmail too.
Yeah. There is...
That may be one of the things they have in common, actually.
Not all the time, but she definitely
Right.
uses leverage.
Yeah.
So Eliza says, may the best man win. And Nash says, I look forward to it.
Yeah.
And Miss Scarlet. And I do love a challenge.
I do love that they're setting her up with this professional rival.
Yeah.
Because she hasn't had like somebody that she's actively working against.
True, yeah.
So yeah, I do. I like Patrick Nash for what he is.
And what's interesting is she's not working against him, but he is actively working against her.
He's
like
trying to
throwing
undermine
up
everything she does. Yeah.
So from that exchange, we cut to a different scene. We're outside of the Royal Botanical Society.
Yes.
A man is welcoming Eliza as a new member called
a potential new member
called Miss Belfry, and we find out that his name is Mr. Humphreys.
Yes. And he is flirting with her.
Oh, hardcore.
Constantly.
Yeah.
All the time, the whole time.
She mistakenly calls a fern a shrub and is quickly corrected.
That is a fern.
Yeah. It's Osmunda regalis, to be precise. And she says that...
Oh, how I do love to be corrected, Mr. Humphreys.
Which made me laugh. Like, I was like, oh my gosh, wow, she's really laying it on thick. She brings up the Angel of Inferno plant, asks about its poisonous properties and its geographical location. Mr. Humphrey continues to hit on her.
Yes. He has one-track mind.
He is focused.
He just wants to date her.
And Eliza plays along because she has something that she wants.
Right.
And the Angel of Inferno grows in volcanic slopes of Guatemala and also here at the Society. So that's why we know why she's there.
Yeah,
she knows
that the Angel of Inferno is there.
So there's access.
And she asks Mr. Humphreys for his expert advice on it. So
yes.
she's laying it on thick.
And we find out that only the members of the Botanical Society can access the
Angel of Inferno.
So that's a clue.
Yeah.
And so Eliza, Miss Belfry in this case, is not a member, and Mr. Humphreys offers to move Miss Belfry's name up to the top of the list.
Yeah, because there's a long waiting list, and he could do her a favor. If you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours.
Yeah. So Eliza wants to see the membership list first because, as an unmarried lady, it is imperative that I only associate with the right sort.
Right.
So that's her justification.
I was like, a membership list feels like it should be somewhat confidential, but he's just like, oh, of course.
Yeah, well, it's what she asked for is plausible enough, and I was like, I actually wrote down like that's actually a good lie, like on her part, because she's usually not very good at lying. Yeah, but that was actually like I was like, okay, that makes sense.
She's using what she has to her advantage,
which is what William told her to do a while back. So. Mr. Humphrey is overdue for an appointment. Come back tomorrow. Eliza pretends to prick her finger.
Yes. Oh, and then she like kind of swoons a little. Yeah. And she asks if she can recover in the privacy of his office. And he's like, of course. And he goes to follow her and she goes, alone. And he looks real...
he's really disappointed.
Disturbed. But he takes her to the office and she immediately starts rifling through his files and piles of paperwork.
But she's interrupted because he comes in and you think like, oh, well, maybe he's like...
Gonna corner her. Yeah. Like, I mean, he feels real swarmy. Like, no, I don't like it.
But he says that the police are there, but it's not the police.
It's not the police. It's
Nash.
It's Nash. And they're there on very important confidential police business, and they need to see the membership list.
Which is a good lie. Yeah. And so it's lie versus lie, and they have like a little bit of a showdown between the two of them.
It was funny because she said, "Oh, I'm well acquainted with Scotland Yard," and Nash is like, "You don't seem like the type to be arrested often."
She broke character because she was like herself when she said that she knew people from Scotland Yard. I think that
was the moment she slipped up.
She slipped out of her character, and Nash pounced on it and asks how. And Eliza says her uncle works for the Home Office, and then. Nash asks for who it is, and she just comes up with a name.
Mr. Fenchurch?
Fenchurch or whatever, yeah.
I can't remember.
Yeah, so Nash then goes on to insinuate that Fenchurch frequented the brothels and got caught.
And a terrible thing that happened to his reputation. So many men frequent that brothel, but he got caught.
Oh, and so that casts a pall or a shade on her reputation
her
as by association. And so Eliza leaves, and Mr. Humphreys gives the list to Nash. So Nash is winning at this case. He's got the list.
He's beating her to the membership list.
Yeah. So then we from that we cut to outside of Eliza's office. Yes. William is
he's waiting for her there. Yeah. And she vents to him about Patrick Nash and him undercutting her business. And she says, every man I've had to deal with has been detestable. And William just goes, well, I'm glad I dropped by.
I love that quote. I'm glad I dropped by. And then Eliza, even though it's a joke, Eliza's like, I'm glad that you did too.
Yeah, and she genuinely is actually happy to see William.
But then as William learns more about the case and finds out that it could be a potential
poisoning,
there could be more poisonings, William demands info on the case because it's a threat to the public. And Eliza, kind of just giving herself a little bit more time, promises to give notes by the end of the day,
right?
Which William sees through.
Yeah, no.
He's
I
think
I wrote down the exact quote. He says, I know that look, the look that is covering a multitude of calculations that are currently racing through your head. End of the day, Eliza.
Yeah. And Eliza is frustrated that she was so easily read and that he knows her inner workings so well.
He's known her since she was a child. Yes. Tends to happen when you know someone that long.
Yeah. So William leaves, and then we cut to a little bit later in the day.
Yeah.
And Ivy is chastising Eliza about eating at her desk and being,
What would your father say? Oh, I know what he would say. He'd say, he can't tell her anything.
And she's narrowed down the list, but not by much. So she doesn't have many leads. And Nash has the full list.
Right.
So Ivy says, shouldn't he be heading to Scotland Yard by now and to deliver her notes?
Right.
And Eliza says she will. And then Ivy asks why she doesn't ask Moses, which Moses isn't in this episode.
Right. Moses is not in this episode.
So, and then Eliza shares that she doesn't know where he is. So
right. He's off.
Yeah,
right now, somewhere, and she knows she learned not to ask.
No,
so
she changes the subject at this point, and she mentions Mr. Potts and lies about Mr. Potts liking Ivy's new hat. And Ivy's like,
did he?
Yeah.
Did he? And she's like, you did see him today.
So
and then Ivy changes the subject.
Yeah.
She said that Eliza used to love Dr. Flint's Universal Elixir,
yes.
and she swore Eliza used to lie about having a sore throat just to get a dose, which reminded me. So I had ear infections a lot as a kid, and there was a pink, I think it was amoxicillin. We just called it the pink medicine.
Okay.
It tasted so good that I went to the doctor, my ear hurt, that was a bummer, but I would get this pink medicine. It was fun. So every time it was time for a dose, it was like, hooray!
Yes, make it taste good.
Relatable.
Yes.
But anyways, Ivy says that it's a cure for everything, coughs and colds and stain removal, which kind of is a little disturbing.
Oh, yeah.
And
it's the Windex of elixirs.
Good for everything.
Yes.
And then back when Eliza was a child, though, it was called something different. It was Flint and Doyle's magic medicine.
So we're like, whoa, that's a clue.
Doyle.
So
there is a Doyle involved in this equation.
Did you just say Flint and Doyle?
Yeah.
And so then we cut to in Dr. Cedric Flint's office. We find his first name. So Dr. Flint's office, Flint is being inspected by a Dr. Stanhope.
Yeah.
And there's a crackle in Flint's chest, so he's and Eliza enters and wants to speak to Doyle alone.
Right.
Dr. Flint is very dismissive and kind of a jerk again, very misogynistic, and shares that he's hired Nash, which Eliza
She
knows.
knew it was coming,
that.
Yeah.
So
that now he has 2 detectives on the case.
Yeah, and Eliza says Nash and Sons, not that he has any sons.
Yeah, he says that her unwillingness to share her findings suggests that she's made no inroads.
Yeah.
And, I mean, she hasn't.
It's true.
Really, so far. But this is her only clue. So,
so they leave.
Yeah, Dr. Flint leaves.
Flint and Stanhope leave, and so Eliza's able to ask Doyle about the elixir's name. And that's when he shares some information about his father.
Right. So we learned Doyle, the Doyle on the magic medicine was Mr. Doyle's father, who Dr. Flint met while he was in India. And his dad changed his name to Doyle because no one would have bought a product called Flint and Mahajan. And so they have a connection here because Eliza's father's name still hangs on her office.
Yep.
So they have this whole like they have to change who they are in order to
fit
actually
into society,
succeed.
which is one of the themes of the show.
And she says when Mr. Doyle's father died, that was difficult for me.
Yeah.
That Dr. Flint took his name off the product
So,
and demoted his son to assistant rather than making him partner. And it's kind of like that must cause some resentment.
So in my notes here, I wrote down motive.
Yeah.
So,
that's her thought,
yeah.
is that maybe Doyle is doing this himself.
And Doyle says, "You are mistaken." And then I wrote down, "Is his father still alive?" I'm trying to think of like what could still happen, because I was wondering who said that the father died. Was it Eliza who said that, and maybe it wasn't? And so
okay.
that's just me thinking as I was watching the episode. So Eliza leaves but watches as Doyle exits, and so we cut to outside of the Royal Botanical Society at this point.
Yeah, she's about to go back into the Botanical Society for round 2.
Well, it looks like Doyle's a member. Doyle walks in at this point.
Oh, yeah.
And so Eliza is about to walk over, but while she's walking over to follow Doyle into the Botanical Society, she collides with this woman who then turns around and accuses Eliza of taking her purse.
Yes. And Eliza's like, "What are you talking about? I didn't take your purse." And she's like, "I saw her put it in her pocket," and she reaches into her pocket, and there's her purse, and then there's Nash.
Reverse pickpocket.
Nash right around the corner.
It's a setup.
Watching Eliza get arrested.
Nash smiles as Eliza's arrested.
So rude.
And this is at this point I wrote down mustache, because like Nash has one of those. It has the little like
curly little bit. Yeah.
It's I always think of the Snidely Whiplash like mustache, like he's gonna tie someone to train tracks. Like whenever I see something like that, so he has that like sinister little like I'm gonna do the bad things mustache.
He's the road runner in this instance.
Yeah. Yeah. So then we cut to nighttime at Eliza's house. William is knocking at the door looking for her because she promised
the notes. And they were not delivered. And Ivy answers the door and says Eliza's not home and she was about to have dinner. And William invites himself in.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
And
well, that would be most welcome, William says. He just goes right in.
That's right. And he sits down and he's just complaining about Eliza, her opportunism or selfishness, and then there's like the slow pan.
Oh, I love the shot. It was a close up of him, and it just zooms. It pulls back, and you see both the people there. Because it's not just Ivy. It's not
Ivy. Mr. Potts is also there. And so William's complaining, and he tries to bring Mr. Potts into it. He's like, "Surely you agree with me, don't you, Mr. Potts? She's caused you a many headache.
Yeah.
You're always saying how impossible she can be.
Untrustworthy and unchristian."
And he's like, "Oh, I don't think I've ever said that."
He scrambles. He's trying to look good in front of Ivy. This is an adorable, just the way this was written is perfect.
He's just like, "Oh, no, I don't think I've ever said that." And William's like, "Your exact words were impossible, untrustworthy, and unchristian."
Yeah.
And Mr. Potts is just like, "Miss Scarlet can be somewhat single-minded, but I think what Miss Woods is saying, because Miss Woods, Ivy is trying to, defend Eliza. What Miss Woods is saying does have some truth. Miss Scarlet is trying to build a business in a world that is usually the reserve of a man." Like he feels so uncomfortable doing it, but he's looking directly at Ivy.
Yeah, and
he's saying
I wrote down right at this sequence. I was like, Ivy is having a good influence on Mr. Potts. So I was like, yeah, and then
she's looking at him like,
"Yeah, well, you better say good things about my girl." And William continues. He says, "Come on, admit it. You loathe her."
And he just
Potts just laughs uncomfortably,
chuckles.
And I'm just laughing at the situation because
Yeah,
he's so uncomfortable. And William keeps at it. Potts tries to change the subject. It's a mess.
Yeah, Potts is like, "Oh, the food, it's so great. The dumplings, so delicate and moist." And he's just desperate.
So good. Such a good
William
scene.
Stop. It's real funny.
So then after that,
we flash to Scotland Yard.
Yeah.
And Eliza's been bailed out, and she assumed it's by William, but it wasn't William.
No, it's Mr. Sinclair, Mr. Basil Sinclair,
was
the reporter.
Was it Phelps that let her out of the cell? Was it Phelps?
Phelps was the one who actually got her out of the cell.
Because he said, "I would have come down and kept you company if I had known," which I thought was she's just a regular occurrence.
Yeah, just first name basis. We know each other. We're good. Yeah. So, but no, it's Mr. Sinclair is the one who bailed her out.
Basil Sinclair is there, and he's bailed her out because whenever she has a feature in his publication, it's sold exponentially.
Yes. Eliza's stories sell.
Yeah. So he wants to write a story about her current case. An intoxicating tale of blackmail, poison, and witchcraft.
Yeah.
Witchcraft.
And Eliza, like, there's no witchcraft.
There is no witchcraft.
But
and
but then he says he's really excited to write it, and he threatens to write it.
He's going to write the story either way.
With or without Eliza.
Without her help. And either she will be his heroine or Nash will be his hero.
Yeah. So this is...
And
and this is the line.
This is where she says, this is blackmail. And he goes, this is business.
Using her own words against her. Yeah. Great writing here. That was great. And so after that, we cut to men with guns coming down the stairs. And Fitzroy's there, and he's dropping bullets left and right at Scotland Yard. And Phelps insults him. And as he does, William is walking by.
Right.
And William tells Phelps that he has a case for Fitzroy. Right. And Phelps protests, but William pulls rank.
Yeah, he does. He says, "I'm your governor," and he says, "Yes, Duke." And it's so we do know it's a raid on the Cooper gang, which is the gang that they infiltrated before, where Fitzroy really dropped the ball, and William ended up in a fist fight and all of that. So William pulls him off of that and saves his butt this time.
Yeah, and Fitzroy says, "Thank you, sir," and William says, "I don't know what you're talking about."
I don't know what you're talking about.
He's still playing it very...
Yeah. So I think here we're going to take a quick break, and when we get back, Eliza's going to return to the Botanical Society and have to deal with Mr. Humphreys again.
As Miss Belfry. Welcome back. We are at the Botanical Society with Eliza. And
as Miss Belfry.
Yes, and she is back in Mr. Humphrey's office.
Oh, yeah. They're having this conversation, and it comes up again that he'll move her name to the top of the waiting list if she'll have dinner with him.
Yeah. Oh. And this is when...
I just feel this is such relatable content for every woman who's ever lived.
Definitely putting the full court press on that. She kind of diffuses it by saying that her finger, that was like the one that she pricked on the rose
brick finger,
has a foul-smelling pus.
Yeah, and he comes over like he's going to check on it, and that's when she goes, foul, just some foul.
He's like, whoa,
foul-smelling pus. That's hard.
Foul-smelling pus.
He like immediately jumps back.
Yeah, and then she regrets missing. Like he had a speech about a book launch or something.
He had a lecture. She said she regrets that she wasn't able to make it to his lecture. And he said, well, it's more of a book launch for the Woolrich Trust. So that's important.
a new entity in the episode that we were going to keep track of.
Yeah, the Woolrich Trust was there selling their new book to raise funds to bring medicine to the poor. So that's a nice thing.
And then he also notes that the book had some information about the plant.
A whole chapter dedicated to the Angel Inferno.
Yep, and that the plant glows in the dark.
He mentions that it has a luminous quality and it glows in the dark, which will come in handy later on. She asks if she could buy a copy of the book, and he doesn't have another book to sell her because Nash, he bought the last copy. That police officer that you met earlier, he bought the last copy. And she asks, did he find what he was looking for on the membership list? And it's a confidential police matter, so he can't talk about it. Yeah. And then she asks what the book is called. Mm-hmm.
And it's Kill or Cure, The Poisonous Properties of Plants.
Yeah. But about that dinner.
Yeah.
Let me just find my diary.
And so he turns around to get his diary, and he's like, and he's still talking to her, and then he turns back, and of course.
And she's gone. I was like, she's going to make her exit here.
Eliza is gone, of course.
She's just like, I'm going to zip out of here real fast.
So then we change scenes to Eliza's office.
Yeah, she's in the office. She's flipping through the book.
Yep.
And William arrives, and he's not happy.
He is not happy because he was expecting her to show up with all of her notes.
Yeah, because there's poison involved, and somebody could die, Eliza.
Yeah. And Eliza tells him not to huff or puff. She tries to explain, and William's like, I neither huff nor puff. And then she just wants a well-done Eliza. She wants a well-done Eliza from William to say that.
And he goes, I've done that. I've done that multiple times, many times. And she goes, well, not nearly enough.
Not nearly enough. So Eliza's grumpy about being...
Here, have the case. Yeah. And she thrusts it at him. Yeah. And I'm at a dead end anyway. He says, this is you being professional, is it?
Yes. Again, great dialogue. I love this show's dialogue.
And she says, what? So before she was saying that she just wanted a lead to pass on to him. And she says, what I said is true. I just wanted to find a lead before handing the case over to make you proud of my work. And so she's laying on this goat real thick, and he's like, all right, come on.
Fine, come on. And Eliza's confused, and William, basically, he just cuts to the chase. He's like, he sees right through Eliza's, like
this
machination.
Is just
She's trying to get something.
Diatribe to get you to come along on the case with me and work the case together.
Stop talking and just bring the file. And Eliza smiles as she leaves because she's like, she's like, okay, she's actually getting what she wants, even she was a little frustrated that William could see through her, but like
ultimately end game met.
Yeah. So then we cut to a different location. Fitzroy is tells that Flint wants to build a factory on this. So Fitzroy's giving like a rundown of what he's found.
Some information on the case. So Dr. Flint recently bought the land that was earmarked by a charity to build a hospital for the poor.
Yeah.
And Eliza says, was this charity by chance the Woolrich Trust?
And it was.
So William asks Fitzroy to pull the membership list for the trust, because now we can compare two lists.
Yes.
There's the membership to the Botanical Society, and there's the membership to the Woolrich Trust. And where does that overlap?
And we find out that Doyle supports the Woolrich Trust.
Right. He attended the fundraiser.
And that there was medicine for the poor, and that Flint basically swooped in and outbid the trust and stole their land, basically.
It didn't steal it, but
bought it.
He bought the land out from underneath them.
And so this is where I wrote down smear campaign against Flint. Like, is this like a motivation there that having Flint's elixir poisoned could actually, like, no one want to buy any of it because they wouldn't know which one.
Yeah.
So Eliza and William both suspect Doyle at this point.
Yes.
So then we cut to outside of Flint's factory. So we're there at the factory that was, I assume...
Yeah, outside of, like, Doyle's office, essentially.
So Eliza and William enter and find Doyle passed out at his desk at the factory. And Eliza holds the glass with alcohol up to the light.
Well, she dims the light.
Oh, and then...
she dims the light, and she sees that it kind of glows.
So we know, because it glows...
It's poison.
It's poison.
It's with the Angel of Inferno. Yeah. And so it's not Mr. Flint at this...
Doyle.
Mr. Doyle at this point.
Yeah, so we cut to Doyle at the hospital, and Flint is there right next to his bedside.
Yep.
No doubt I shall be next, he says, and there's a new letter, which he just, chucks.
Like, here, she's like, you haven't even opened it. And he says, basically, he doesn't care what's inside.
He only cares for Doyle, which is a surprise. Yeah. So Flint actually cares deeply for Doyle.
He says he's the closest thing to a son he has.
And Dr. Stanhope is there, and I put a little arrow. I was like, suspect? Because he mentions the 2,000-pound amount, and I wrote down, how did he know at this point?
Like what the ransom is.
And right after he does that, I thought it was like, it was a little too obvious, I think. Because then Eliza immediately says she knows who the black market...
who the blackmailer is.
Blackmailer is, excuse me.
Yeah.
And so, but then we're kind of shifted because... I'm thinking I think it's Dr. Stanhope because he knew more than he should have.
Right.
But then we cut back to the office.
And it's also real suspicious that he thinks that the ransom should just be paid.
Yeah, he's pushing.
He's pushing for that.
So
that
very
was my
suspicious.
Clue.
Yes.
So those two things together.
So we both think that it should be this.
Dr. Stanhope.
Yeah. But then we cut back to the office and Basil Sinclair is there. And
they're in Eliza's office.
Eliza's just laying it out, but she says it's Mr. Humphreys.
Mr. Humphreys. I was like, well, he's gross, but is he the blackmailer? This doesn't seem right to me.
This whole thing seems very odd, but she's like, she's talking about it. The
faulty X in the typewriters, typed letters.
They match. And
he has access to the Angel of Inferno. He's tied to the Woolrich Trust.
Basil's really digging all of this.
Yeah, he believes it hook, line, and sinker.
Yeah. Eliza does open the letter, and like you said, the X's.
It's funny because he said you didn't even open the letter, and she's like, "Well, I thought it would make for a better story," and he compliments her for her ability to spin a story.
So Eliza tells all this to Basil, and then I wrote down, "Is Basil working for Nash? Something doesn't seem right. My money is still on Stanhope," is what I said. And so Eliza explains the extortion scheme, but there's no witchcraft.
But the poison is luminous, which has a touch of black magic to it. So maybe.
So, and then Eliza invites Basil to be there when Mr. Humphreys is arrested, and then I say, I think this is a setup. I think this is a setup by Eliza to
in hindsight, I'm like, yes, this is a setup.
So, and then it cuts to at the Botanical Society, and I'm like, ha, Nash is already there. I'm like, yes. Nash is already there talking to Dr. Flint, accuses Mr. Humphreys using everything.
All of the evidence that Eliza just laid out.
To Basil.
Yeah.
And Eliza acts surprised. Mr. Humphreys is confused. Miss Belfry? And Nash is like, she's no lady.
She's no lady. She's a lady detective.
Exactly. Eliza confesses the truth, tells Dr. Flint the truth. Well,
they take Mr. Humphreys away, he's arrested.
Yes.
And that's when Eliza pulls Dr. Flint aside and says that she knew she was being double-crossed and that she passed on false information, and that the real culprit is Dr. Stanhope.
Yes.
Which makes sense.
Yes.
He was finally going to build a hospital where the poor could be served and nursed and looked after, and Dr. Flint ruined it all with his greed.
Swooped in and stole the land. And they talk about, Flint is worried about Doyle, but Eliza assures him that it's just a mild dose of the poison, that Doyle will be fine. Doyle's name is back on the bottles now because Flint has pretty much done a 180 and is now a nice guy all of a sudden.
Towards Doyle.
Towards Doyle.
He cares very deeply about Doyle. Yeah, so he's going to put his father's name back on the medicine. He's going to make him partner, which he should have been all along. And Doyle says, I really want us to buy the land and donate it to build this hospital. And he says, of course, and we'll do it in your father's name.
Touching.
And I'm just like, oh,
yeah.
Okay. You're still kind of gross, but you're nice to Doyle, so we'll let it pass.
So then we cut back to Scotland Yard at this point. Eliza is pouring William a drink.
Which she should just do all the time.
And she says she'll never trust Sinclair again. And William's like,
why did you do it in the first place? She compliments William for pulling Fitzroy from the Cooper gang raid. Basically says, you did him a solid. And she's smiling at
There's
William.
some affection there.
There is. But he thinks that it is an indulgent smile. He's like, stop giving me that indulgent smile. She's like, it's affection. So this is where I'm like, the witty, playful banter is back. So they are not mad at each other anymore, at least. They are back to being friendly.
Yes.
Go ahead.
William says if he could read her mind, he doubts they'd ever speak again.
Oh, yeah.
And I laughed at that too.
Yeah, do not pretend to read my mind, William. If I could, I don't think we'd ever speak again. William walks her out and tells her to give his regards to Mr. Potts.
Oh, yeah, because he suspects Mr. Potts will be a frequent visitor.
Yes, Ivy seems quite taken with him. And Fitzroy comes up and she says, Fitzroy. He says, Eliza. They go on their merry ways. But Fitzroy, is smiling.
Lingers a little bit.
His eye are lingering on Eliza. And I'm like, does he have a crush on her? I wouldn't hate it. He's
definitely
that.
He's definitely fascinated by her.
Yeah.
We'll put it at least at that, maybe more.
So, but William notices.
Gives Fitzroy a case. Fitzroy leaves, and then Monroe comes in and is mad.
Yeah.
William says
low-key mad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
William says Fitzroy has an encyclopedic knowledge of poisons, which is he's just making something up.
It's just a lie. Yeah.
And
you think that Monroe's going to out him, but he goes, "Oh well, congratulations." And Fitzroy goes off on his own little way.
Yeah.
And Monroe then confronts William about disobeying another direct order because this is not the first time.
Monroe cares about that.
Yeah. And then the police commissioner arrives again.
Yep.
And Monroe...
Fitzroy's father.
Yeah. And Monroe is just up his butt.
Is glaring at William.
Yeah.
And so we just know that's not a good situation. That this whole thing... He's not happy with William. And so William's in the bad graces of Monroe at this.
Yeah.
So we cut from there back to the home... at the door.
Yeah.
And Nash shows up at the outside of Eliza, right at the doorstep of the stairs, while Eliza's going in.
Right, to congratulate her on her win.
Congratulates her on her win. Eliza's confused, and then says that, the whole setup with getting Mr. Humphreys,
right?
There could be
it's going to be printed.
Sinclair's going to have to, Basil Sinclair, they're going to
illustrated report.
They're going to have to submit they're going to have to submit an apology because of publishing something that's false,
right?
And
basically ruining Mr. Humphreys' reputation.
And she insinuates that Mr. Humphreys is probably the kind of person to
the apology is not going to be enough.
It's probably going to be a
lawsuit.
Yeah. So Nash still wants Eliza to work for him.
He wants it even more now.
And the answer is still no. And then he says, even you, Miss Scarlet, will have your price. And so, again, blackmail.
Right. Yeah, well, he implies that Moses probably has a past. Like, don't drag Moses into this.
So he basically is like, hey, I could blackmail you or at least make Moses' life really horrible.
Yeah.
But he says that he's not going to do that. He wants her to come to him willingly.
Which is just he's so gross. He's so gross. Yeah. Everything about him gives me the icks, but I'm also like, she finally has a real rival, like a real foil other than William, who has previously been. So,
and he wants her to come to him willingly, not coerced. And then he says, until then, Miss Scarlet. And that is the end of the episode.
She also says that she can play as dirty as him too. Yeah. So this is going to be real interesting.
It's on.
Yeah. I do like Nash's character, but he gives me the icks. Like he just
as he should
yuck.
Because
like there were a lot of yucky men in this episode.
Yeah.
There was Flynn. There was Mr. Humphrey, who was just smarmy and wanted a date so bad, and now Nash, which he will be a recurring character.
Yeah. So anyway, there's a lot there to unpack. But thanks for watching along and listening with us. And we
hope you enjoyed watching along with us, and I hope you're enjoying playing bingo with us. If you find clues, remember to email us at ps@witf.org.
And at the end of the season, again, we'll send you a YouTube link to our special bonus episode where we'll reveal all the clues.
And if you love Postscript, which I hope you do, be sure to review us on your favorite podcast app. Like, subscribe, and comment on youtube.com/@WITFmosaic. Maybe tell your friends that you should listen to, especially if you love Miss Scarlet. Yeah.
And we look forward to talking to you about the next episode.
Yeah, I think there's just 2 more left.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm excited.